The following is a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Jung Seed, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands. Welcome into Taking Care of Business today, featuring the Garden Doctor. If you have a question for the Garden Doctor, we welcome you to give us a call, of course, 887-9595. That's our call or text line, or 885-4446. We have Jeff Hall producing up in the studio for us. He'll make sure those calls get right down to us right away. Dick, good morning.
Good morning.
Some interesting weather we had yesterday.
Yeah, and today too. A little windy out there. I mean, temperatures are getting up there, so they're not quite as uncomfortable as they were a few weeks ago. But that wind sure makes things feel raw.
It definitely does. Now, I have a question right away based on the weather. I got out there this morning and I noticed that one of my big trees that had all these little red buds on it and everything. A lot of them got blown off or were on the ground from all the wind. Should I be worried about that tree, or is it going to be just fine?
It will be fine. You know, it's probably just the winter buds that are expanding to start pushing the new leaves and depending on the tree, whatever fruiting part of the tree coming out. So no, that's not a problem at all. That'll all kind of fade into the grass and get composted and add to the nutrients that your lawn will need. So no, that's not a problem at all.
Now, if anybody out there happen to have any limbs come down off the tree, things break off, whatever, any recommended things they should do on the tree itself?
Yeah, what you should do if you've got broken branches, especially if they're not broken all the way to the trunk, is to go in there and do a smooth cut and then use a pruning paint on them so that they don't attract the insects that could bring diseases and stuff in. So not too late to do some pruning. Getting to the point now where the buds are breaking, and in another week or 10 days, it's probably going to be time to stop, not to do the pruning until the new growth has come out and hardened off, and then you can start pruning again. But the thing you don't want to do now is start pruning any shrub that blossoms before the 1st of July, because those fruit buds or flower buds are on the plants when they go dormant. So Any pruning you do in the wintertime or early spring, you're cutting your flowers off.
And that cuts away from your harvest, right?
Yeah, it takes away from what you're doing. Although with apple trees and a lot of the fruit trees, a little bit of pruning is not going to significantly cut your crop, because with apple trees, they figure if between 5 and 8% of the fruit buds set fruit, you're going to get a bumper crop. So you don't need those hundreds of flower buds that come out to get a good crop. In fact, it's better if you don't get a lot of them to set, because the more fruit you set on a tree, the smaller the fruit will be, because a tree can only produce enough sugars for a 5% set. And so if you've got a lot more than that on the tree, the fruit is going to be smaller, and they're going to be later. So, pruning the trees and getting them so that they're open spread for fruit trees to get that spread, not upright structure is really important, because you want to get as much sunlight into the middle of that tree as possible, because that gives those leaves are the manufacturer of the sugars and things that go into the fruit and into the seeds that are inside the fruit. And so you want to get as much sunlight penetration into the tree, where with the shade tree you want to keep that central leader going up farther, because that gives it a little more strength as far as ice damage or getting a breakage in the tree. So it's a little bit different the way you prune a shade tree versus a fruit tree.
Now, it looks like we do have somebody calling in on line one, so let's go ahead and go to the phone and see if they have a question for you. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, Ninja. How are you?
I'm doing well, Tyler. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good on this blustery day.
Indeed.
I just kind of want to ask the garden doctor, when would the first time to mow your grass?
I would say, when the grass is probably 2 to 3 inches high, you want to Right now with lawns, now is the best time to apply the first application of fertilizer because grass mainly grows in the spring and in the fall, in the cool part of the season. In the summer, it tends to go more dormant unless we get a lot of rain. So you want to get that grass off growing well, and especially if you have a spotty lawn, because those open spots that you have in your lawn will breed the crabgrass that comes up.
Right.
Where if you've got a good healthy lawn that's really thick, you won't have much trouble with crabgrass because bluegrass will out perform and it will create a situation where the crabgrass doesn't have a chance to germinate. So, when the sunlight reaches that soil, and most soils will have crabgrass seeds in them because the crabgrass seeds will last for years in the ground.
Right.
So if you've got an area where there's a lot of black dirt exposed, where the sunlight hits the black dirt and warms the soil up early, and you get the crabgrass germinating, that's when you're going to have trouble. So fertilize the lawns right now because they're starting to turn green, and you want them to start growing really, really well now. And then maybe in another month or so, hit them again with another application of fertilizer, and that's when you want to put the broadleaf weed killer in. The crabgrass preventer, because crabgrass comes from seed every year, it's a germination inhibitor. You want to put the crabgrass preventer on when the soil reaches about 55 degrees, 6 inches down. Or I usually tell people when the forsythia is in bloom, that's the best time to put your crabgrass preventer on. Because if you put it on too early, the herbicide will last for about 4 to 6 weeks. That's about as much prevention as you get out of it. So if you put it on 2 weeks early, you only have 2 weeks of prevention. So when the forsythia is blooming, that's those yellow flowers that are everywhere in the early spring.
Right.
That's the best time to put the crabgrass preventer on. And if you've got a dual grass and fertilizer and crabgrass preventer, then you want to, I guess I would wait until that forsythia bloom, because we still have another month and a half or 2 months of cool weather that the grass is going to grow. So, yeah, and then, fertilization should not be done in the late spring because if we get hot and dry, the grass goes dormant and then the weeds take over. So you've got to use the fertilizer to make the grass grow in preference to your weeds, which are mainly grow when the weather gets warm. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for calling, Tyler. You have a great day. Now, when it comes to mowing, how often should we be mowing our lawns?
I would say, in the springtime, once a week is fine. You don't want to wait until the grass is 6 inches high and then you have a lot of thatch. And if you've got a lot of dead grass, which at this time of the year is when grass is brown, probably a good idea to get out there with a broom rake and try to get some of that thatch out of the lawn and put it in your compost pile or use it for mulch around some of your vegetables or your flowers. Putting it in the compost pile will give you nice organic matter for next spring. But getting that thatch out of there, the problem if you don't do it is that the thatch will build up on the top of the soil surface and the grass will actually start growing in the thatch, and then when hot, dry weather comes, the grass will have a much harder time making it than if you've taken the thatch out and make that grass grow in the soil. The other thing with watering lawns, you want to water heavy and then let it dry out between waterings, because that also makes the roots go deeper and will give you a much nicer lawn in the summertime. So, if you do a few things in the spring and if you've got dandelions or creeping Charlie, when they first start to grow, that's when they're the easiest to kill with a broadleaf weed killer. And Fertilome's weed, Fertilome's product for killing the broadleaf weeds really works well because it's a weed killer that you can use even when it's cool outside.
Okay.
So
Now, for these products, are they something that you essentially put over your whole lawn like you're spreading fertilizer? Or are these like you see dandelions, you go out there and you spray it right on that
it
dandelion?
kind of depends on how many dandelions you have. If your lawn has a lot of dandelions in, then the easiest way is to just it's a liquid. It's Weed Beater Ultra is what it's called. And it tells you on there how much of the chemical you have to put per square foot. So it's not one where you put a tablespoon per gallon or 3 tablespoons per gallon. What you want to do, if you've got a sprayer, you've got to figure out how many square feet you cover with that sprayer.
Right.
And then you go back and you figure out how many square feet you've got, and then the instruction will tell you how many fluid ounces of the chemical you have to put in the sprayer to cover that much territory. A lot of people will have a sprinkling can that they use for applying the broadleaf weed killer. And the easiest way to calibrate that is to fill it with water, and then on your driveway just measure out, an area 20 by 20, which is 400 square feet.
Right.
Just the length times the width, and then you figure out how much of that sprinkling can it takes to cover 400 square feet, or you can actually use the whole sprinkling can and then just measure the length and the width that you covered, and that will give you the total number of square feet that you can treat with one sprinkling can, and then you go back to the bottle and it'll tell you, if you do 1,000 square feet with a sprinkling can, it'll tell you put 6 fluid ounces or 8 fluid ounces, whatever it is. I don't have a bottle in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly what to do. But that's how you calibrate for spreading that broadleaf weed killer. Now,
And we promise nobody will think you look silly if you're out there watering your driveway.
no, they won't. But the Weed Beater Ultra is not an herbicide for crabgrass. That's just for the broadleaf weed killers like plantain lily or dandelions or creeping Charlie.
What about, and we always get a few of these in my yard, and they always seem to come back. You get those, the thistle-y plants.
Oh, yeah, thistles, Canada thistles.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit more difficult, although Weed Beater Ultra will weaken them up. One of the things that we talk about in the fall, though, is creeping Charlie and the Canada thistles are something that you want to treat in the fall, because what you're doing, the Weed Beater Ultra is actually one of the hormones that will create a situation where the plant tends to grow more. And by treating creeping Charlie or the thistles in the fall, it makes them grow longer into the fall, and they can't get ready for winter. And so by using it in the fall, like in mid-October, a couple applications before winter comes in, it weakens the plant, and then the plants will not make it through the winter. So it's actually using the winter to take the weeds out of your lawn.
Now, in the meantime, I've got a tool my dad made for me that's just like almost like a V of metal on a pole that I can just stick in the ground, dig it out, and that's fine, right? And like, I'm not forcing it to propagate further or anything, am I?
No, but with some of those weeds, I mean, if you don't get the whole root system out, it'll sprout and grow. So
I've had a few spots where it seems to come back a few weeks later. So
it depends on how big that crown is when you take it out. I know I had some Canada thistles in my strawberry patch, and I didn't take care of them. I went away for a few weeks, and when I came back, they had really multiplied. So I took Roundup and killed not only the thistles, but I killed the strawberries, and I had to start over again.
oof.
So
Yeah, you don't want to kill your
those
strawberries.
thistles. I mean, if you do if you do want to kill the plant in place by just treating them with Roundup right on the plant, because Roundup will kill the grass too. Although I saw an ad on the television where they have a new Roundup that's supposed to just kill broadleaf weeds. I haven't investigated that, but they're always developing new products, I guess.
Right. Now, one product that you've mentioned here already, and you talked about a lot, is the Weed Beater Ultra. That product's been around for a little while, right?
Oh yeah, that's been around for many, many years, and it's a much better product than the Ortho Weed Be Gone. The Weed Be Gone you have to apply when it's warm outside,
Right.
and so I mean I'm not trying to knock
Right.
competitors' products, but the Weed Beater Ultra is a better herbicide for broadleaf weeds in your lawn, because you can use it when it's cool, and it does a very nice job.
Now, I want to get back into lawn care a little bit, because obviously spring, we're in April. When you think April showers. If we're thinking about fertilizing or treating our lawn for anything, how much do we have to pay attention to the weather forecast?
With the fertilizer, I like to do it when the grass is dry, so that the fertilizer will filter down to the soil. The soil. If the grass is wet, the pellets tend to stick to the leaves, and it could burn the lawn a little bit, but it'll recover from that.
Right.
So it's best that you wait until the grass is dry for fertilizer. For the weed killer, you just want to make sure that it's not too windy so that the spray drifts, but that can be done pretty much any time.
And you don't have to worry about it like washing off or anything if it rains the next day or 2 days later?
No, because once it dries on the foliage, it's pretty much going to do its duty.
Next question I have is about aeration. Saw somebody the other day, they were pulling out of the garage. They had like a big roller with little pins all over it, and they were prepping to take it out on their lawn. Is that something we should be looking at doing this time of year? And
it depends on your soil type. You
Okay.
know, if you've got a heavier soil, aeration is a good thing to do. With a silt loam, like most of the people have in this area, aeration is only necessary when you've compacted the soil by putting heavy equipment or something on it.
okay,
In most cases, taking those plugs out and leaving them on the lawn is not going to do an awful lot of good. But if you've got a heavy soil, aeration is good to do every 2 or 3 years.
well, so we got a text that we have on the line. Jeff, what's our texter asking?
Good morning. Jenny would like to know, is now a good time to put your strawberries that are in a container outside to start growing?
I've worked on strawberries because I love strawberries, and I
Who doesn't?
actually plant them on my. I maybe shouldn't even tell you this, but I plant them on my septic mound, because you want to have plants that are very shallow rooted, and that's why most of the time it's just grass, because grass doesn't get down very well. But strawberries have a very shallow root system, so I have mine on my septic mound. What I like to do if you're starting with the bare root strawberries is to start them like in solo cups, I think the 8 or 9 ounce solo cups. Start them in a peat-based potting mix for probably 3 to 4 weeks. And what you'll find is by keeping them inside and starting them that way, they're going to grow much nicer, and then transplant them into your container or into your garden after the danger of frost is gone. One of the things that you'll find when you're doing that, though, is the dormant plants that you get will have blossoms in the crown. And if it does throw out a flower, the best thing to do is to take the flower off, because if you allow that flower to go to fruit, I mean, you'll have a strawberry there, which, tastes really good
Right.
when it's real nice, but it's going to also detract from the establishing of that plant. So if you see a flower bud come out of that dormant crown as the leaves are coming out, take the flower off, and you'll have a much better start for your strawberry plants. And then I would say probably mid-May, first part of June, that's when you plant them outside, because if you start them indoors, they're going to be much more susceptible to the cold weather. And so by starting them indoors, you give them a head start. They have the nutrients and the water that they need to really get going well. Where if you plant a bare root strawberry plant outside or in a container and then take it outside, that soil is going to be cold and the plant will not get a good start. So get that plant off to a good start. I've also done that with asparagus and had really good luck with growing asparagus in a solo cup for 4 to 6 weeks. And then I have a drill bit that will dig a nice little hole.
Right.
So with asparagus, I go down probably 8 to 10 inches, and then I take it out of that solo cup and put it in 8 to 10 inches deep. And by then you have fronds, the foliage that will be above the ground when you plant it, and then that way you don't have to wait. The old way to do asparagus is to dig a trench 10 to 12 inches, about the depth of a spade.
Right.
Put the asparagus roots in the bottom of that trench and just kind of spread them out like an octopus, and then only cover them with a couple inches of soil and then wait for the new sprouts to come up, and then you backfill that trench until you're even. By starting them indoors, you're getting them off to a much better start, and you'll see a lot of nice white roots in the outside of that cup. And when you plant them, it may even take a year's production life out of that thing. So, if you're starting with bare root and you're planting them in a trench and bringing them up that way, it may be 3 or 4 years before your spears are about the diameter of your little finger. That's when you can start cutting them. Where if you start them in a pot or start them in a cup and then take them out of the cup and put them in the ground, it cuts a year off that time. So had really good luck with that. Plus, I've had much better results with the livability of those roots. So
Now, going back to the strawberries, if you do have them started inside, is there a point in time where you could start maybe transitioning part of the day with the strawberry outside?
Oh, sure. I mean, if it's nice and warm outside and you've got the sunlight out there, yeah, take them out into the sunlight. And especially a week before you start planting them outside, you want to temper them. So you take them out during the day and then you bring them in at night if it's going to get really, really cold. If it's only going to go down into the mid-40s, leave them outside, because that'll also harden them off a little bit. But by getting them started indoors, they're going to do much better. I mean, I did a video on both the asparagus and the strawberries. So if you go to the Garden Doctor channel on YouTube and put strawberries in or put asparagus in, you can see exactly how I did it, and you'll have really good luck with this stuff.
Well, that's awesome, because those are both very popular items in this
Yes, they
area.
are.
And I know, my family, we just did asparagus planting not last year, but the year before. Mm-hmm. And my wife's already like, well, are we going to be able to harvest this year? Are we ready to harvest this year? I'm like, probably not. It's a patience thing.
Yeah, you have to wait until. See, the diameter of the spears that come up out of the ground are in direct proportion to the health of the crown. If you put a lot of carbohydrates into that crown, it's going to put up a much thicker stalk.
Right.
Where if you puts up a very thin stalk, it means that there's not enough food in there to keep it going. So you don't really want to cut those spears off when they're small in diameter. The other thing with asparagus, so you can use a pretty high nitrogen fertilizer like a 20-20-20, like you would with corn or with some of the other monocots that you grow, because the part of the plant that you're eating is the vegetative part, and And the other thing you can do is in the fall when those berries that are on the plant, if you've got male plants or female plants, when the berries start to go from red to black, just go out there and take those off. Just run your hand through the foliage and take them off, because the plant is going to be putting as much energy into the seed as they are into the root system at that time of the year. So, because asparagus do have male and female plants, so and the new hybrids that are coming out are mostly male, so they put everything they have into the root system, where the females want to produce the seed.
I did not know that.
Yep.
That's interesting. Speaking of seeds, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, you mentioned corn. Every day I drive into work and I'm listening to the Midwest Farm Report.
Sure.
And of course, there's always ads for different, seed coatings and fertilizers and other things to help the seeds against diseases. And I think, okay, so if I'm a backyard gardener and I want to plant a couple of rows of corn, or if I want to, throw some green beans and stuff out there, whatever, do I need to be worried about picking up products like that as well? Or is that not necessarily for the home garden?
No, in fact, with sweet corn, the corn, we have both treated and untreated. And we recommend that they use the treated, especially if they're going to be planting the super sweet corns or the extra sweet corns, because there's very little carbohydrate in that seed. And if we get a cold, wet period of time after you plant the seeds, there's a good possibility that seed will rot in the ground if it's not treated. And so the treatment on the sweet corn has both the fungicides for the soil damping off funguses, plus the insecticide that'll keep the soil insects from eating the seeds. So you can get either one at Jung's. You can get either the treated or the untreated. If you're an organic and you don't want the corn seed treated, you can get that also. But we recommend that you use the treated seed for that reason. Now, beans are not treated because you don't need that. They come up so fast that you're not going to have trouble with that. But we do recommend that you treat them with the inoculant, because the inoculant is the nodule-forming bacteria that legumes use to fix nitrogen from the air into nitrates that the plant will use. So if you use this inoculant on the seed, you dampen the seed before you put it in the ground and put some of this inoculant on the seed coat, that will give you a much nicer crop.
That's good to know. Along those lines, I'm thinking about right now two things that are big in my household, and I know we want to plant them this year. I'm looking at onions, both green and bulb variety, and potatoes.
Okay.
Is it too soon? And are either of those things that I can start early?
Yeah. With the potatoes, it's time you can get potatoes. You can actually plant potatoes when it's cold outside, because the whole thing goes in the ground. I've also done a video on how to start potatoes. You want to get the seed potatoes about 10 days to 2 weeks before you plant them. Now, the potatoes you buy in the store for eating have been treated so that those sprouts, those eyes, don't grow. So you don't want to use those for seed. But the potatoes that we sell are certified seed potatoes, and we have them in the garden center or through the catalog online. And what you do is you cut them so that you have about an ounce to an ounce and a half piece of potato with 2 to 3 eyes on each piece. And if you've got more eyes than 2 to 3 eyes, you want to take those off, because if you have 2 to 3 eyes per piece, you're going to have 2 or 3 sprouts coming out of the ground, and so they'll have more sunlight and more chance to make nice big potatoes. Where if you just cut them and throw them in the ground, the first thing that's going to happen is, if we get cold, wet weather, that cut surface is going to be the perfect spot for the microorganisms in the soil to start rotting the piece. So best way to do that is 10 days to 2 weeks before you plant them, get them, cut them up so that you have a nice 1.5 ounce piece of carbohydrates with the sprouts. You can let them sit out in the warm because that'll get the sprouts growing, and it's called chitting, chitting.
Right.
And what will happen then is the sprouts start to sprout and will start to grow. And so when you put them in the ground, you can have maybe a 3/4 inch sprout on the ground. And that way, when you plant them, you can plant the sprouts so that they're pointing upward. And then you can cover them. Also done a video on what to do when you're planting them. What I do is I make a trench about 6 inches deep, and then I put the potato pieces in the ground,
Right.
so that those sprouts are pointing up. And then I cover the pieces with compost or sand or something, maybe 2 or 3 inches of that. And then when the sprouts start to break through that, then I put and they get higher, then I put the soil around that. And then as they're growing, I mound the soil up, because as potatoes grow, once they start flowering, that's when they start making the tubers, the parts that you eat. And you don't want those tubers exposed to the sunlight, so you want to keep backfilling around hilling up around the potatoes, so that they stay under you have soil over them so that they don't turn green, because potatoes are a piece of stem tissue, they'll turn green if they're exposed to the sunlight, and that's not good to eat. So you have to cut that piece off.
I want to ask you more about potatoes, but before we do, I do want to remind everybody, of course, this is a paid program. The advice and opinions expressed in the program are solely that of Jung Garden Center, not WBEV or Good Karma Brands. And we do have a caller on line one. Let's go to the phones. Hello, caller.
Hi. I was wondering, I planted onions from seed,
Okay.
and they're up by about 9-10 inches now. Do you trim them back?
Yeah, you can give them a haircut. Yeah, give them a haircut, and that'll keep them from being real spindly. And onions can be planted out into cool soil too, so you don't have to wait until the danger of frost is gone. But if you're going to plant them out, what I would do is harden them off, take them out when the weather is nice outside, when you've got sunny conditions, about a week before you're going to plant them. And a lot of people have trouble getting those nice big onions, but there are a few things you can do to make sure that they grow to the size that you want. Now, onions only have 13 layers. I don't know, most people know that, but
I didn't know that at all.
13. No. There are 13. They're called sepals.
Okay.
Okay, and so once you plant the onions, you want to fertilize them right away, because onions have a very small root system, and if you don't fertilize them and keep them moist, they're only going to form tennis ball size onions. But if you keep them watered and fertilized through the season until about, it seems to me about the 1st of August, that's when the bulbing part of the onion starts to happen. Before that, they're called vegetative. They're just growing leaves, and you want to grow as much leaf surface as possible, because the more leaf surface you have, the bigger the bulbs are going to be. In fact, I use trickle irrigation on my onions, and I get softball size
Right.
onions very, very easily. And again, there's a video on growing onions on the Garden Doctor channel, and it shows you exactly how I grow my onions. And it's important to keep the weeds down, because they are not good competitors. Plant them about 4 to 6 inches apart. And I actually use 3 in a row of onions. I have 3 onions. I have, one and then one in the middle, and then so they're 6 inches apart. But I have 3 onions in a single row, and so the row is like almost 9 inches wide,
Right.
But then I put, 2 in and then 1 in the middle, 2 in and 1 in the middle. And then I run that trickle irrigation down the middle, and I actually put fertilizer in the water using a siphon to fertilize them also. And not that difficult to get really nice big onions.
That's awesome.
I think I even brought some in last.
I think you did
fall.
bring some in last fall. Caller, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you cut that about 50% then?
Yeah, I would cut them back so they're about 6 inches.
Okay, and then just letting you know that I did grow last year the Red Wing hybrid and Patterson, and I still have some left that are hard yet. And
Yeah,
they were very nice this year.
Yeah, Patterson is a good storing onion, and Red Wing, not as good as Patterson, but still stores pretty well. I mean, I still have onions in my garage too that I grew last summer. And the other thing you want to do is make sure that you're using long day. I have to stop and think now. The bulbing process starts when the days get shorter and the nights get longer. Or no, the days get shorter and the nights get longer. That's when the bulbing process starts up. So it's a weather-related thing, and so the onion varieties that you grow in Wisconsin are different than the ones you'd grow in Texas. So probably a good idea to read the catalog or to talk to somebody in the garden center that knows what they're talking about.
That is definitely good advice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, caller. Yeah, onions are something I remember planting as a kid. My grandfather would, he'd pull out the bag of the little
Onion sets.
onions. Yep, and we'd go along and put them in and do that. And then we'd also plant some by seed, and he'd plant them much closer. But then we'd go back and we'd thin them out.
Yeah,
and that was my favorite day because you pull it out and you have basically like a little baby onion.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'd eat a lot of those.
Get the green onions. Yeah. The onion sets are mainly for green onions because they're going to be a pretty spicy onion if you let them go all the way. We also have onion plants too. So if you haven't, the seed should have been started weeks ago. So it's almost too late for seeds. Although, if you plant seeds directly in the garden, you're still going to get nice onions, but not as big as the ones that you start from plants. We have there's one farm down in southern Texas that grows probably 90% of the onion plants that are sold in the United States, and we get semi-loads of them every year because we sell them in the catalog and in the garden center. And so if you haven't started your onion plants yet, it's best to buy the onion plants. And actually, yesterday I took a couple bundles of the onion plants that were in the garden center and put them in the greenhouse. And you can also get them started early by potting them up in a flat or something that gets the onions started. So, and then wait until probably the first part of May to plant them out. And then you've got a head start on onions too. So there are some tricks of the gardening that will give you much nicer plants and produce and stuff like that. So, a lot of that you'll find on the Garden Doctor channel. I've done a lot of videos on, vegetable gardening, on flower gardening, on fruit gardening, on raspberries and how you how you prune raspberries and the strawberry and the asparagus and rhubarb and all those sorts of things. So if you go to the Garden Doctor channel and then put, the subject that you want behind it, you'll usually find a video there.
I'm going to have to go check out your potato one because I know my wife was watching something where they were putting and growing the potatoes in like a big outdoor pot.
Yeah.
And they were doing it that way.
Potatoes can be grown in almost anything. 5-gallon buckets. We have potato bags that we sell through the garden center and in the catalog. So if you don't have a great garden soil and you want to grow them in a peat-based soil, you'd be surprised how many potatoes you can grow in a potato bag. But if you go on YouTube, there are probably 50 different ways you can grow potatoes, and none of them are any better than any others. I've grown them in my raised bed garden, and when you're growing them in a really rich soil like that, you really get a very good harvest. But they take a lot of space, so I usually grow them in the soil because you can get an awful lot of potatoes out of a 20-foot row of potatoes. And then the other thing you want to do with potatoes is be sure that you're growing the variety that you want, because there are a couple different kinds of potatoes. There are the starchy type potatoes and there are the waxy type potatoes. And some are better for baking, some are better for French fries, some are better for mashed potatoes. And so, read the description. Yukon Gold is one of the more popular ones, and that one is, pretty good all-around one. But if you want baking potatoes, then you want a potato like Superior or Kennebec. But the russet potatoes are usually good for baking and not so good for mashed potatoes. But read the description, because it'll tell you in the description what those potatoes are good for.
I feel like there's so many more varieties now of vegetables than there used to be, or maybe I'm just not remembering it. But I remember it was like there was really just russets or baby reds were kind of your potato thing. Onions, it was more just we'll do on white onion, yellow onion, red onion. Peppers, it was like, okay, hot or not. That was kind of your thing. But there are so many different varieties that now you can really narrow it down to what's suited for your soil conditions, your area, your climate.
Right.
And
whatever
really,
color you want. I mean,
one
of our catalogs, one of the 8 catalogs that we have is solely tomatoes. And in that particular catalog, there's almost 450 varieties of tomatoes.
Goodness gracious.
And not just scratching the surface. There are actually thousands of varieties of tomatoes, from the huge tomatoes like Big Beef or Brandywine, or, down to there are some that are even pea-sized. And they're different colors. There's purple and white and red, of course, red tomatoes. And then in that same catalog, we have about 150 varieties of peppers, all the way from the peppers that if you look at them, you burn your eyes, like the Carolina Reaper or the Ghost Pepper, up to the very sweet bell peppers like Big Bertha or Fat and Sassy, or they're just a ton of different varieties of vegetables. And rather than looking at the pretty pictures, which everybody likes to do, you want to read the description, because it tells you exactly what that pepper is meant for. And so, I wasn't a fan of hot peppers when I was smaller, but when we purchased the Totally Tomato catalog in the late 90s, we put test gardens in where we put the hot peppers and pepper trials to make sure they do well in our area. I got to really liking hot peppers. So, when my wife makes chili, we have a very mild chili that she likes, and I add the red chili sauce and some of the hot peppers, and I like mine a little more spicy than she does. So you can do a lot with the peppers, So,
So that's exactly how my family does it. My dad will have to make 2 pots whenever he does the big chili cooks. He always does, and one is for everybody else, and one is for me and him. And mine and his always has several habaneros in it or something else, and a lot of red pepper flake. So that's a good way to do it. Speaking of peppers, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but somebody told me you shouldn't plant your bell peppers too close to your spicy peppers.
No, that's not true. I mean, peppers are they grow pretty much side by side, and they're not going to hurt each other. The one thing you want to do with peppers, though, peppers like to have a sour soil, and our soils tend to be sweet because Wisconsin sits on a big piece of limestone. So the soil pH tends to be more on the basic side, on the sweet side. But peppers like a little bit more acid, and so what you want to do when you're planting your peppers is take a few matchsticks or a little sulfur and put that in the soil that you put back around the pepper plants, because that'll get them off and growing, and they'll be loving it a little better than if they and the nutrients will be more readily available to the plant if they're in a little sour soil.
Now, is that after you've struck the matches? Or no, before?
No, because what you're doing when you're striking the matches, you're burning the sulfur off. Now, the sulfur is what makes the soil sour, and so you want to put the matches that have not been struck, that have not. So either that way, or just get some garden sulfur, or some iron sulfate is also an acidifier, or aluminum sulfate. Put a little bit of that with each of the peppers that you plant, and your peppers will grow much nicer and bigger and tastier.
Well, there you go. Well, Dick, unfortunately, we ran out of time for today. I guess the only thing left to do is ask you, how can people find the Garden Doctor? We know you're on YouTube, which is great, and everybody should go check that out. But if somebody wants to swing by the greenhouses, where are you guys located? What are your hours?
Okay. Well, we have 6 stores. Randolph, of course, is the headquarters of Jung's, and store hours there are 8 to 5 Monday through Saturday. We're not open on Sunday in Randolph. The other stores there are 3 of them in the Madison area: the Sun Prairie, Northport on Northport Drive near Werner Park, and one on the south side of Madison on 151 as you're going out of Madison on PD. And we have one in Stoughton and one in Stevens Point. Their store hours are 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturday, and 10 to 3 on Sunday.
There you go. Well, Dick, it's always a pleasure having you on. You always share so much information. Look forward to seeing you again back on here soon.
Thank you.
This has been a paid program. The advice and opinions expressed during the program are solely that of Jung Garden Center, not necessarily WBEV or Good Karma Brands.